expected, fellow bats and vampires. I know it's been just over a month since I posted anything on the channel. I know I did a short for you guys to explain my absence. It took a while for me to produce this video. As you might have noticed, I have a new intro for the channel. That's something I was working on whilst I've been away. That's what was taking the time, trying to figure a new intro for you guys, because I didn't want to release a new video with the previous intro because I wasn't happy with that intro. So I hope you like what I've come up with, and I'd like to give a special thanks to Zoe from Infinity Freaks, because she helped me to produce and put that together. So big round of applause for her. Thank you. I appreciate it. Today's video, guys, is going to be the first vampire movie review of this channel. Today's movie of choice is The Little Vampire. Over the years, since I was a child, I've watched this movie countless times. It's one of my favourites. I know it's more of a childlike movie than it is anything else, but I really, really, really enjoy this movie, and I thought, where else better to start with a movie that I know really, really well? The Little Vampire was released on the 13th of October 2000, starring Jonathan Lipnicki, who you may remember from Stuart Little, and also featuring Richard E. Grant, and also the other main character of this story, of the Little Vampire movie. It was portrayed by Rollo Weeks. His character is Rudolph. Now, before we get into the movie, The Little Vampire was based on books that were released originally in German in 1979. It was a series of fantasy novels, and this movie was loosely based upon that. The names are a bit different than what they are in the movie. And also, a few years back, they released a cartoon version of The Little Vampire. Now, before we get into the movie, the movie budgeted about $35 million and only grossed $28 million, which is quite surprising, because I see this as more of a cult classic myself. I was quite surprised upon doing research into the background of this movie that that's all they took for this movie, which is a surprise. This movie is about a young 9-year-old boy and his parents who've moved from America to Scotland. It's based around the borders of Scotland, the Scottish borders, which is like around Edinburgh and all those kind of places. It does say, when I was having a look at where it was actually filmed, that it was filmed near places like Edinburgh and Fife, however it's pronounced. If you've never been to Scotland, guys, a little tidbit. I did a video previously to this one. Scotland is absolutely gorgeous. You should absolutely go there. That's another story for another day. Actually, the previous video day, but there we go. Tony and his parents have come to the US because his father has gained work to build a golf course. Jonathan Lipnicki and the other main character being Rollo Weeks, and a notable name that people know that you know from this movie, Richard E. Grant. He's quite a big name actor. The movie is set in Scotland. The premises of the movie is Tony Thompson, the main character, has moved there with his family due to his father taking a job to build a golf course for Lord McCashton, or as we come to know as Roy McCashton. Roy McCashton, Lord McCashton. And Tony Thompson as starts to have dreams about vampires, and he starts to have a bit of an obsession with vampires, which, excuse me, which Lord McAshton's grandchildren bully Tony Thompson for and tell him he shouldn't have come here in the first place. That's a quote from the movie. He shouldn't have come here in the first place. And Tony Thompson dreams of an amulet, which the vampires need when the comet is coming over in order to get what they're after. More on that later. And so Tony has his first day at school. He comes home. His parents are going for a meeting of sorts, like a ball type thing with Lord McAshton. And whilst they're away, Tony is pretending to be a vampire, and this thus attracts our other main character, Rudolph the vampire. He sees Tony in a moment of desperation because he was currently being chased by a vampire hunter that I don't think we actually learn his name through this story. Quite honestly, I can't recall finding what his name was when I was looking through. When I was rewatching the movie, I couldn't quite hear where it said his name. But he was a vampire hunter in the movie that has a background of former vampire hunters from throughout the ages, as he goes on to say a bit later in the movie that his family have been hunting vampires for generations. So he's come from a line of vampire hunters, essentially, which makes sense of why he is one and knows of vampires due to his connections. But an interesting tidbit to note about this movie is both the vampire family, the core vampire family, and the vampire hunter both have an amulet, one of which is designed to help the vampires, one of which is designed to help the vampire hunter. Or as the vampire hunter says in a part of the movie, he can use it to send them straight to hell. Whether that's true or not, we don't actually find out. But this is a sweet movie of the story of Rudolph and Tony Thompson. Tony Thompson ends up helping Rudolph that night that he lands in his bedroom after initially being scared, and he takes Tony flying after Tony helps him by helping him get some cow blood, because one of the premises of this movie is the vampire family in it do not drink human blood due to the fact they actually want to become human. And they've been hunted for centuries, and it's safer to actually drink animal blood than human blood because it's not as noticeable, of course. But it's a sweet story that follows Tony and Rudolph through the whole movie. And Tony eventually meets Rudolph's family, and at first they don't like Tony, but then they like Tony because he starts to help them by discovering what the crest, that because he shares a vision with Rudolph's father, which is Richard E. Grant, and he sees a crest, and he discovers what that crest is, and ironically, that crest belongs to Lord McAshton, the McAshton family. And Tony starts to do some digging for the vampires. The vampires' quest is to become human. They want to become human. They don't want to be vampires, which is an ironic overlay when you think in the story that the vampire hunter wants them gone. but the vampires also don't want to be vampires either, which is quite fascinating. One of the funniest things in this movie is throughout the movie, there's a farmer that keeps look that every scene he's in, he's looking out at his cows, and there's one missing every time. And each time he goes back to the shed where they are, they're either hiding, or in the last scene where none of them are actually come out, they're actually hanging from the banisters of the barn, which is absolutely hilarious, quite honestly. And also another hilarious scene is when the vampire hunter, he actually captures Tony Thompson at one point of the movie, and the cows who are now vampire can now frigging fly. Flying cows in this movie. And the cows just fly towards this truck with loads of lights on it and just shit on it, essentially. A massive cow pack just flies straight in the window. It's funny. It's absolutely hilarious. And eventually, of course, they are able to. He's able to help the vampires and save the vampires, and Tony actually is the one that ends up wishing for the vampires to become human. The wish that Tony makes is the vampires always wanted to be human, and that's what Rudolph asks him to wish for when he holds the amulet towards the end of the movie. On the comet, I've always really loved this movie. It's a really good movie. I know I'm not giving the best descriptions of the movie, but for me, it's always been a 10 out of 10. It's such a warm, heartfelt movie. I think that the actors and actresses they picked for the roles were perfect. Were perfect for it. They were really, really good. They were well selected. I think that Jonathan Lipnicki was perfect in this role, and I think that Rollo was also perfect. And I also think Richard E. Grant was. I can't say that any of the cast was cast badly, because they were all really good. They all played a really good role, and I think this is just a beautiful story to have been told. It's for me it touches me because it's so the kindness that Tony shows towards Rollo is the kind of kindness that I would show as well. It's it's a touching for me. It's a touching story of two people becoming friends and sharing a bond and love, and that speaks a lot to me personally. The CGI for the time isn't too bad. I felt it's not that bad at all. Considering it is the year 2000 and CGI was still, they were still finding a way, and it was still kind of early days at the same time. I think they did really well with what they had. Also, a little tidbit, guys. As the premise of the movie is about Tony Thompson's father taking the job to build a golf course, a tidbit about that is golf was actually invented in Scotland, which I've also always found quite ironic, considering if you've ever been to Scotland, it's a very windy, very wet, very cold place to be a lot of the time. And it's quite interesting that a game that's played outside needs calm weather to play was created in a place that does not have calm weather. That's always been quite fascinating to me. That I think any vampire lover should go and watch. I mean, of course, it's not like Dracula or like Interview with a Vampire where it's really gruesome, nasty vampires. This is just more a wholesome story. It's quite a short movie. It's only about an hour and 35 minutes as well. I highly recommend this movie. It's, again, one of my favourites. And I hope you've enjoyed this little rundown of The Little Vampire. I will improve a little bit on my movie reviews as I go along. This is just the first one. I'm not used to doing them, and there's a lot of information to go into a video of this type. So excuse me for not being very informative, and I hope the next video I make isn't as long in between as this one. And I wish that you're all well and safe and stay vampire-y, and I shall see you in the next video. Bye.